Breaking news out of Raider Nation. Major roster decisions have left fans buzzing and insiders questioning what's really going on in Las Vegas. Did the Raiders just set the stage for a massive move? Stay locked in, because what I'm about to share could completely change the outlook for this team. Raider Nation, good morning. Big news is shaking things up in Las Vegas today. The Raiders' final 53-man roster is set, but the way they structured it has people asking one serious question. Are the Raiders planning something big behind the scenes? As I looked closer, a few things really stood out. The Raiders kept both Aiden O'Connell and Thomas Harper on the active roster, despite the fact that both are dealing with injuries. O'Connell is battling a fractured wrist, a 6 to 8 week setback, and Harper, he went down in the very first preseason game after just one snap and hasn't seen the field since. Now, here's the thing, normally, these kinds of players would have already been moved to short term IR, but instead, Las Vegas held on to them. Why? To me, that signals they might already be setting the table for new additions, whether through free agency or even a possible trade. But before I break down the real possibilities and the names to watch, let me remind you, this channel is your home for daily Raiders updates. If you want the fastest breaking news, insider analysis, and no fluff coverage, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and don't forget to ring the bell icon so you never miss a single update. Now let's get back into it. With Lonnie Johnson Jr. expected to return soon, the Raiders could be shuffling pieces on the back end of their roster. And that raises another question: what happens to players like Chris Smith or even depth guys like Will Putnam, given the team is currently carrying 10 offensive linemen? Oh, and don't forget, the Raiders already moved on from Terrell Edmonds. That decision alone hints they're clearing space for someone else. And later in this video, I'll reveal exactly which waiver wire targets I think the Raiders should pursue, because make no mistake, they are absolutely gearing up for changes. When you really step back and piece everything together, it feels like the Raiders are quietly setting up for something bigger. Sure, some might argue, why not just place Aiden O'Connell and Thomas Harper on short-term IR right away and keep a couple of healthy depth guys instead? On paper, that would have been the simple move. But the Raiders didn't do that, and to me, that speaks volumes. Think about it this way. If Las Vegas had kept someone like Trey Taylor or Amari Gaynor, only to cut them a few days later when new signings arrived, those young players would have completely missed their chance to hit the waiver wire. For guys fighting tooth and nail to earn a roster spot, that's not just a missed opportunity, it's potentially the end of their NFL dream. And say what you will about this franchise, but I believe the Raiders showed a certain level of respect here. Instead of stringing along rookies who likely wouldn't stick, they held on to two injured players who still have a real shot at contributing once they return. It's a calculated decision, and honestly, it feels like a sign of integrity from the front office. Now, the big question becomes, what move are they saving space for? Could it be a splash addition in the secondary? Someone like Justin Simmons would immediately change the tone of this defense. Because let's be honest, the offense looks ready to roll. I'd even argue it has top 10 potential in the NFL right now. But defensively, that's where things get dicey. At Allegiant Stadium this season, I can guarantee we're going to see some wild, high-scoring shootouts if nothing changes. And don't overlook the quarterback situation either. Cutting rookie Cam Miller raised some eyebrows, and it makes me wonder if the Raiders have been eyeing another move at the position. Did they overspend a little to bring in Kenny Pickett because they knew Miller wasn't part of the long-term plan? That's a question worth asking, and it might just be part of a bigger picture. The decision to bring in Kenny Pickett still raises questions. Did the Raiders overspend intentionally, knowing all along that Aiden O'Connell might not be their long-term answer? It certainly feels like this move wasn't random. It was part of a bigger plan. Now let's be realistic. The Raiders aren't bringing in anyone better than Geno Smith or Kenny Pickett at this stage. If they add another quarterback, it's going to be a QB3 option, someone who can provide insurance, not steal the starting job. Names like Dorian Thompson-Robinson, John Wolford, Kyle Trask, or even Tyler Huntley stand out as possibilities. They're not headline grabbers, but they would add depth in case injuries strike again. But let's be honest here, most fans don't care about a third-string quarterback. The real concern lies in the secondary. That's the weak spot. Thomas Harper is expected to land on short-term IR, Lonnie Johnson Jr. is already sidelined, and Terrell Edmonds, who many thought would crack the 53-man roster, was cut despite taking first-team reps in preseason. If you ask 100 Raiders fans what position worries them the most, almost all of them will say the same thing. The secondary needs help. So what options are out there? The dream addition would be Justin Simmons. No doubt he's the number one target. But there are other names worth watching. John Johnson brings center field range. Marcus Epps just requested a release in New England. Mike Edwards knows the AFC West well. Jalen Mills has connections with members of the Raiders front office. Jordan Whitehead has ties too. All of these players could step in and make an immediate difference. And then there's the trade market. One name that keeps coming up is Kyle Duggar of the Patriots. He's got elite physical tools, but reports suggest he may have fallen out of favor in New England. For Las Vegas, that's an opportunity. Duggar is on what's essentially a prove-it stretch of his contract, making him both affordable and low risk. If the Raiders could land him for a late-round pick, that might turn into one of the savviest moves of the year. But until something happens, this remains the biggest storyline. The Raiders' offense looks ready to compete at a high level, but the defense, and especially the secondary, could make or break their season. Now let's turn our attention to the cornerback room, because this is where things get very real for the Raiders. Thomas Harper's versatility matters here. He can line up at safety or slide into the nickel corner role, which gives the defense some flexibility. But with Harper sidelined, that safety net disappears, and suddenly this secondary feels dangerously thin. And let's be honest, the struggles have been obvious. Darren Porter hasn't had the kind of preseason anyone hoped for. And when Eric Stokes is your number one corner, it feels a lot like last year when Zamir White entered the season as RB1. You can say you're confident all you want, but deep down, there's a nervous energy in the room. Sure, there's upside, and Pete Carroll has a reputation for getting the best out of his defensive backs. But even the best coaches need talent to work with. Somebody in that building needs to tell Carroll the truth. This cornerback group simply isn't strong enough to go toe-to-toe with the weapons they'll face this season. So who could fix it? One veteran name at the top of my list is Stephen Gilmore. He's proven, he's steady, and he'd immediately bring leadership to a shaky group. Mike Hilton, recently released by the Dolphins, is another option, though that departure came with some drama. Other names floating around include Trey Flowers, Troy Hill, and Kendall Fuller. None of them are lockdown stars, but each has ties to people in the Raiders' front office, and sometimes connections matter as much as tape. And then there's the trade market. If you're looking for a bold move, keep your eyes on Jamel Dean from Tampa Bay. The Buccaneers' front office has already made some telling moves this offseason, and with John Spitek's ties to the Raiders, this isn't just wishful thinking. The price tag would be steep, around $15 million, but Dean is a legitimate difference maker on the outside. Another name that deserves attention is Greg Newsome. The Browns know they aren't contending for much this year, and with Newsome on a fifth-year option, he could be a player they're willing to move. The cost wouldn't be sky high, but any team trading for him must be ready to take on his $11 million salary. For the Raiders, that's still a phone call worth making. And while we're here, there's still no reason not to at least check in on Stephen Gilmore. He's proven he's available, and he could immediately steady the secondary. But corner isn't the only area to watch. Defensive end is another position where a move might be coming, and here's why. Charles Snowden is facing a likely suspension stemming from a DUI. Even if that ruling is delayed, the expectation is that it's going to hit at some point this season. When that happens, depth on the edge becomes a real concern. Right now, the Raiders have Max Crosby, Malcolm Koonce, Tyree Wilson, and Snowden. But with Wilson seeing more snaps inside at defensive tackle, this unit looks thin. Too thin. That's why adding another edge rusher makes a lot of sense. So, who are the realistic options? Jadeveon Clowney tops the list. It's surprising his name hasn't been connected more strongly to Las Vegas, because his versatility would fit perfectly. Darius Smith is another proven veteran, though I doubt he ends up here. Jack Barrett's ties to John Spitek make him an intriguing possibility. Preston Smith, even at 32, still provides a consistent presence. And just for the fun of it, yes, I'll throw Clelin Ferrell's name into the mix. Stranger things have happened, and we've seen the Raiders bring back familiar faces before. Now, beyond edge depth, we also need to keep an eye on the interior defensive line. Losing Christian Wilkins left a massive hole that simply can't be replaced by one signing. The Raiders have rotated multiple fronts this preseason, often with three defensive tackles on the field. There's depth here, sure, but it feels shaky for the grind of a full season. No one on the market can replicate Wilkins' impact, but adding another reliable body could help ease the load.